an assault on our community. And it started with the ETTT. Regardless of whether you believe it's going to get trucks off the road or whether you think it's not going to make any difference whatsoever, there is no excuse for the decimation that we've seen.
If you walk through our suburb in the morning and hear the symphony of construction noise, you can't be blamed for thinking that the New South Wales government is hell-bent on transforming our suburb into an industrial zone. 2013 saw the commencement of the industrialisation of Beecroft and Cheltenham with the scorched earth policy. You only need to take a drive to the southern part of the Crescent to see the devastation.
What all of our communities want are adequate protection when it comes to the noise pollution. I know it's worse here than where I am, because where I
The Epping to Third Track Alliance has had to be conscripted in order to engage and to talk about the issues that impact upon this community. I don't believe it's the way in which it should have been implemented.
I'm happy to say I support the additional freight line between Sydney and Newcastle. But when governments deliver such infrastructure, they have a responsibility to put in place adequate protections for affected residents. And I know you're not being unreasonable here, and nor...
In Carlingford, and I spent 6 years of my life travelling up this railway line. And it was a pleasure every day. That green corridor that connected my house, my home, with Epping. A beautiful green corridor.
That was from all these trucks. Well, we see trucks going up and down all the way, going crazy around the rail corridor. I've never seen any mitigation of washing those trucks down to protect that frog population. There's lots of box ticking in the EIS, but very little follow-through. It's a disgrace.
Freight train. Here we go.
Here in a Youngstown, here in Youngstown. My sweet Jenny, I'm sinking down. Here, darling, in Youngstown.
I would have seen it in the past and have come along to me and said, well, that's fine. It is for the whole of Sydney, and it's better for the whole of Sydney that Beecroft has apartments. What a nonsense.
It's for New South Wales.
Well, I might suggest to the prior speaker that rather than get angry, perhaps read the charter, have a look at it, look at the principles and see if you can sign off on them. I think that kind of angry response doesn't really help it. We want an informed debate on this. The Charter has a number of principles, and it's been very prominent, and I hear the crankiness over there. It's been very prominent in community campaigning, so I think every politician would have seen it come into their inbox on multiple occasions, and the failure to even know of its existence, let alone have read it and understand the principles, I think shows a politician who's actually not engaged with their community.
Please find out for the community what kind of funding we will get to ensure that the vegetation is actually revisited, and also that there's some kind of compensation for all those families that have currently not been given any noise mitigation.
I think I should start with an education program on the Australian Constitution and where responsibilities lie.
Here in Youngstown, my sweet Jenny, I'm sinking down. Here, darling, in Youngstown.
There should be legislation that they have to clearly state every tree cutting out and the age of those trees. It's a furphy to say, we can't tell you, we only do zones. Well, communities need to know the truth, and communities need transparency.
No evidence of any comprehension of the Australian standard. When they chop these trees, they're meant to be complying with the Australian standard, and I've seen trees literally butchered up against the neighbour's property. No pretence of compliance with the Australian standard. You chop half a tree off in your property, and of course your neighbour who may want to keep their tree is left with a completely unsustainable, fatally damaged tree, which they actually have to remove themselves almost in tears.
We believe the protection authority of trees must go back to council, and we believe the 1050 one policy fits all approach has been a total disaster.
Citizens in Lane Cove are documenting the felling of these trees. We have documented alarming events with these unregulated tree fellers. We have been abused, we have been threatened.
All of the fires that I have seen in the Lane Cove National Park have never impacted upon Beecroft, never impacted upon Pennant Hills.
I am looking at a referral to work cover in relation to what I think is ongoing dangerous practice, but fundamentally we have to give these bizarre, these extraordinary, unfortunate laws an immediate moratorium, because every day they're on the statute books, more and more people are coming in thinking they can make money by destroying your local community. I also think the documenting is very important, and next week we're going to get a tranche of papers from the government that will go...
I don't think, and I would say this to my state colleagues, there was any place for the changes that have been made that are having such a devastating impact, and I think the destruction has been quite wanton, and I think the aspirations of many who have been prepared to be involved is highly questioned.
So we call on the bad New South Wales Government for a moratorium on the 1050 code and urgent review of the Category 1 bushland.
Initiated the tree preservation orders for this shire, one of the first to do it.
So
he would have been beside himself
so what?
If he saw what was happening today. Let
You're
me
a
just
hypocrite.
make that very clear to the abbot hater.
Excuse me, I think this is a little important.
6 more I want to hear.
Hey, can you go if you don't want to listen? Thank you.
I want to hear the others.
Yeah, you have to wait.
So we ask Mike Baird and Gladys Berejiklian put in writing that all sporting facilities will be rebuilt at Cheltenham Oval, not anywhere else, with improved facilities regardless of any budgetary cost blowouts to the North West Rail Link.
And protected.
Bullshit.
And I know only too
You're a
well
hypocrite.
that
You're a
there
hypocrite.
is nobody who is preciously right in relation to these matters, including the gentleman who is the abbot hater.
The inquiry that Dr. Maureen Faruqi is trying to get up and going. She's the Greens member in the upper house, and she's been working on that so that we can get answers to all these sorts of important questions. The hope is that with an inquiry we can slow the process down so that community voices and common sense can prevail on the North West Rail Link.
Yes, the North West Rail Link is necessary for our public transport system. I say public transport system, not private.
In relation to those matters that impact upon my community, I'm in exactly the same position as you. I have views and I make sure they're heard, and I continue to try and do so in a way that is likely to produce better outcomes.
Diminish community rights and put in more and more mechanisms for fast-track approval, a tick-the-box approach to develop...
Indication in your policies of the tragedy that your grandchildren are going to face. This is called intergenerational equity. You've got nothing. You don't recognise.
They made the cannonballs that helped the Union win the war.